Well, hello and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. On today's video, we're going to take a look at this catalog, which I recently showed, what was it, a Super Mini Mail Call episode 36 or 37, or was it even 38? One of those, and I asked if people wanted to see me read through this, so a little trip down memory lane, and generally everyone was very positive and they really wanted to see what was in this catalog. In addition, people asked me if I could scan this thing in so that other people could download the PDFs and have that fun recollection themselves. And of course, this is a very thick catalog, so this video, I'm only going to be skimming through this. So if you want to see everything that's in here, check the description below. I will have a link to said PDF of the scanned magazine. Now, for scanning, I normally use this Epson document scanner, which was donated to me by a local viewer. Thank you very much. It's actually a really good piece of equipment for doing exactly that, scanning documents. It is double-sided, it's extremely fast, and with something like this, what I would have to do is use a paper cutter and just cut the entire binding off, and then you just feed the entire thing, of course with the cut binding, into the sheet feeder like that, use the software on the computer, and it will just do a quick double-sided scan, it adjusts the image, it looks really good, it's pretty fantastic. But of course, that's the problem, is you do have to cut the binding off. And I had several viewers, when I mentioned I would do that, they said, oh, I should just take out the staples, which would work if I had a large format scanner. But this scanner cannot go wide enough to scan pages this way, lengthways. So that brings me to this. This is a camera-based document scanner. Now this was sent to me by the company who makes this, so I guess it's CZUR. I did not actually pay for this, so I am gonna tick the box on the YouTube video that says paid promotion, but I am not getting paid to make a review or talk about this device, nor is this video like being approved before you watch it or anything like that. What you see about this is really gonna be my true thoughts on this document scanner. For people like me who regularly have interesting material, like whether it be manuals or stuff like this, that is worth scanning, I thought it would be pretty great if the channel had one of these. All right, so here is the scanner itself, and as you can see, it's a base with a camera thing and some lights and buttons on it, and it's USB attached. It comes with this little black mat here, which I think means it's not ideal to scan stuff on a surface like this. And actually, I don't even know if my desk here is big enough for all of this. Let's unroll the mat. Yo, it is just the right size, just deep enough. The packing of the entire device was really nice and actually comes with this, which is a side light. I haven't even mentioned what model number this is. This is the ET16 Plus. I think the ones that were making the rounds on other channels was the ET25. I think that has mostly to do with the resolution of the camera sensor that's in the top here. But this side light thing here connects to the base, and it's cool. It has what looks like a MagSafe connector right there. And you just take this and it just magnetically attaches to the unit, and that's where it gets its power from as well. So I'm downloading the software right now. It's about a 500 megabyte download, and it's for Windows XP through 11, and there's a Mac OS X version as well. Sorry that it doesn't appear there's any Linux support, at least that I can tell. While waiting for the software to install, let's take a look at these finger cots. Appears that these are something you can hold in your fingers, and then you can hold the pages of a book down. That way, if you're scanning in a book, you're not gonna have like your thumb in the scan itself. So I think the software will actually remove these when they're detected. That's especially important if you're scanning in something like a book that has a curvature like that. Obviously, if you lay this down on the table, it's just gonna try to close, right? So you have to hold it open. The software or the scanner itself has like these lasers that can scan the page, and that will allow the software to remove this curvature right there. Because obviously if you're scanning, well, at least if the camera can see it, it's gonna get all squished together because the way the camera looks straight down onto it. So it will expand the curved part so the scanned image looks like it's scanned flat. I think that's some of the magic of these types of devices. I put the magazine down here, and I noticed the side lights here are on, and there's like a touch sensitive button on the back to turn those off and on. That's important because it shoots light off the page so it doesn't glare into the camera, while the straight down camera can pick up some of the glare from the overhead lights. Sorry for the shaky cam, but I noticed there's a little color screen on the top of the unit, which actually allows you to see what you're doing when you're positioning something on the scanner. All right, I went ahead and turned off all the lights down here because I noticed that even with just these side lights on here, there was quite a bit of glare being picked up, at least on that little screen, just from my overhead lights. So I guess you want to do scanning with this type of scanner in a light-controlled room, so you're only relying on the lighting that's on the scanner itself. Alrighty, I just hit the scan device, and there you can see my hand sort of creeping in, so I need to make sure I get that out of there. It's gonna automatically crop. Oh, and it's picking up a little bit of this thing that I have over on the side. Let me move that out of the view. The little mat was rolling up a little bit. So I think the claim to fame to this device, besides the fact it can remove those curves from the scanned pages, is it will auto-rotate and auto-adjust and kind of auto everything. There are various scanning modes like flap single page, facing page, manual selection, stuff like that. So facing page. I'm just gonna have to experiment a little bit here. All right, well, it scanned 2 pages, but that doesn't quite look like it worked properly. That's not quite right, is it? It's nice and clear, like it's just crooked. Let's zoom in a little bit. Very, very readable, really good. I mean, I think I'm very impressed with the way this looks. I know I'm recording the LCD screen here with the camera. In fact, I'm gonna tilt the LCD screen a little bit just to get rid of some of the color shift here that's coming from the screen. But the magical auto rotation or whatever, that clearly didn't work properly. And this is what it thought was the other page. All right, just tried another set of pages, and this one worked properly. Okay, enough talking. I'm gonna actually try to scan this in earnest, and I will be back after a jump cut. All right, that scanning process didn't take too long. I used the little button here. It has a little light on it, so you can tell when the camera's busy. So it shoots the lasers at the page, and then it takes the image, and then the light goes out. You can flip the page while the machine is still processing. Now, it did struggle with the first several pages, and then it seemed to work perfectly for the rest of it. And I'm playing around with these utilities here on how to like fix it after the fact. And there's a button down there that said auxiliary correction. And you can see the laser lines across this, that it helps like do the contouring. The problem is the contouring of this thin magazine was throwing off its detection of where the seam is, because it uses the laser with the curvature of the page to detect that. Luckily, there's a box here for adjust the central seam. So you can pick it up and move that. And it's not the best process. It feels a little clunky, but there, I moved it back to the center. And now when I hit save, it's gonna reanalyze the page and it will fix that messed up page. There it is, Tiger memory. Now I think I gotta do it on both. Oh no, it looks like it got them both right now. Yeah, okay, so far so good. So let's look for any others. Okay, here's another one that's screwed up. Auxiliary correction. Adjust the central seam. Now I'm assuming as I got further into the magazine, the curvature more followed that of a book. So it didn't make the mistake of where that central line is. But, and sometimes when you pick up that thing, you gotta click twice. There we go. All right, so hit save, and that should do its magical reanalysis. So that is on the left page. There we go with the system, and then the other page. Yeah, cool. Okay, that's fixing it. All right, looks like everything else is good. There was maybe about 15, 16, 17 pages that were messed up because of that center seam not detecting correctly. Having not read the manual or any help file, I hit this button here to select all the pages, and I'm gonna click over here, searchable PDF, which I think should export to that searchable PDF. Identify language, we're gonna click English, PDF quality, I'm just gonna make it high, and let's hit confirm and see what happens. Oh, it's asking me to save. All right, I hit save, and now it's doing the OCR engine. Now, the machine I'm running this on is not particularly fast. It's like a Xeon equivalent of a Core i7 4th generation or so. So this is far from a high performance machine, but looks like you can move to background and maybe you can scan other things while it's processing. Well, I'm just gonna wait and let it do the processing. It's currently loading images. I sent the OCR process into the background to try to see if I could scan while that's running. I have this book here, it's called Start Programming with the Electron, and that is for the Acorn Electron, which incidentally, I think last time I talked about this in a video, I don't remember where that video was, I kept calling it the Acorn Electric. So sorry about that, yeah. Acorn Electron. This book probably exists, it's already scanned, but I figured it would be a good book to test like the curvature correction compared to the magazine. All right, so right off the bat, I see glare coming off the workbench lights, so we'll turn those off and let it auto-correct. And let's open this up. Now, I don't have the little finger holder thingy-majiggies, but I'm just gonna bend the book so it stays open on its own. Let's hit scan, see what it does. We hit the back button, and these pages I think should be down here at the bottom. There it is. All right, so there's only so much you can do. When the writing is very close to the seam or the binding, then it gets a little bit blurry right there, but it's still readable. The rest of the page looks quite good. Back on the OCR background process, I don't know how long this is gonna take. There's no estimated time. Looking at Windows Task Manager, a single core is being used for OCR, which might explain why it's a little bit slow. Now I noticed with this particular magazine, I think that the resolution of this thing at being 16 megapixels kind of hitting its limit, because the text, while readable, it's definitely a little blocky and not very sharp. Same thing if I look down here, this relax and work efficiently. Well, I mean the and the W here, it's just a lot of jaggies on them. And right here is the scanned PDF, and yeah, it looks really good. Let's just zoom up here. The text is better in here than it was in the program. The program looked like it was way over sharpened, but actually in the PDF here, it's not. So yeah, that's pretty great. Now, when you output the image or output the PDF, there was an option to say auto process image or use original image. And I picked the option use original image. And maybe that's why this looks a lot softer than it did in the program. Okay, so that addresses one of my big complaints. So that's pretty awesome. So I gotta say, I'm pretty excited to actually have this scanner now so that I can scan stuff more easily without cutting the binding, and I'm really pleased with the way this works. It's pretty darn great. So I think I've gone on long enough about the acquisition of this Price Blitz catalog into a PDF, so you can definitely read along and check it all out yourself. Now I'm gonna move the camera up to the top here, and let's take a look at some more of this catalog, and I'll give my commentary on it. There is so much to cover in this that I'm only going to talk about the interesting things that are kind of unusual, things you don't really see anymore, or things that would be extremely rare to find these days. It seems like this catalog, which does not have any dates anywhere, is actually from the end of 1997. I say that because inside there were reviews for products that had quotes that were from magazines, and it had the dates of the magazines. There are tons and tons of goodies in here, so I really recommend that you download the PDF and check that stuff out yourself, because I'm just gonna have to breeze through this so the video is not insanely long. Right off the bat, on the second page, just behind the cover, check this thing out. It's a photo scanner that goes inside your 3.5-inch bay. The Easy Photo Drive, 1200 DPI, 24-bit scanner that automatically scans your photographs. Only $90. What a neat thing. I have never heard of that. That is super cool. Also right here, we have an IDE tape backup solution, 3.2 gigabytes, pretty sizable, uses these like push-in cartridges, but because it's IDE, it's actually gonna be pretty fast. Well, I don't know, 19 megabytes a minute. Anyhow, it's only $100 and includes a tape, and that's neat that it's IDE based. You're not dealing with a slow floppy drive interface. Now, when this catalog came out, stuff was starting to get very cheap in the PC marketplace. At least accessories were. Computers were still relatively expensive, especially laptops. But these are some of the most expensive systems in this entire catalog. Dual Pentium 2 333 MMX has SCSI ultra-wide network server. So two dual processors, 256 megabytes of RAM, 2 Micropolis 4.3 ultra-wide SCSI drives. Were those maybe 10,000 RPM or maybe like 7,200 RPM? 16x SCSI drive, 8 gigabyte SCSI tape drive. Look at that price, $4,500. Ouch. Now here's a picture of that motherboard. So look at that, PC100 memory or maybe PC133. It has USB on it. Of course, it's got AGP, PCI, and 2 ISA slots for your old Sound Blaster or whatever. At least on this page, they don't list the price of this motherboard, but it's probably not super cheap, but I bet you nowadays, if you found one of these, it's probably more expensive than it would be in this catalog. Now here's something that's pretty cool, and I honestly, personally had no idea this existed. This is an AMD, well, I guess it's not made by, well, CPU is by AMD, but it's the Power Stacker 133 5x86. This is an overdrive for your 486, upgrades most 46 SX, SX2, DX, and DX2 systems all the way up to 133 megahertz. And that all depends on your bus speed, of course. And look at the great price. Well, $90 after a $10 mail-in rebate, and of course you're getting quite sizable performance increases. What chip is this exactly? It says AM5X86P75. Not even super familiar with what this is, but it does say here it outperforms the P83 overdrive. That would be the Intel chip, the Pentium overdrive that went in the 46 socket. So interesting, and even faster way to boost the performance of your 46. Now I'm really curious, was this chip really good at math like the real Pentiums, or does this have substandard floating point? But I'm just really curious about this AMD AM5X86 clock quadruple processor with built-in math coprocessor and 16K internal cache. How fast is this, and how competitive is it? Maybe CPU Galaxy has one of these and can do an actual benchmark on this. I'd really love to know how fast this thing is and how far you can push a 46 with it. Okay, now here's one that's totally hilarious. I've heard of some of these, so this thing upgrades. This is so weird. This looks like it's got 4 30-pin memory sticks in another 30-pin memory slot. So the SIM extender. Now I've had some of these on the channel, but the ones I always have seen are 30-pin to 72-pin. But it looks like down here, convert 4 30-pin to 172-pin, convert 4 30-pin to 130-pin, and then you convert 2 72-pin to 172-pin. So you can convert 4 30-pin memory modules compatible with 256, 1 meg, 4, 16, and 64 meg modules to 1 30-pin? So what? You would end up with what? 256 megabytes on 1 30-pin memory module? I don't even fully understand how that would work. The thing is, these types of memory slots are only, well, for the 30-pin, are only 8-bit wide. So if you have a 32-bit processor like a 46 or higher that uses this type of SIM, you have to install 4. Now, how exactly you can install 4 of these SIM extender things? Look how tall they are. 2, sure, because it looks like you can buy the left and the right one. Although, oh yeah, front skew, back skew. So these are 25 bucks. So you could buy 2, but that, I just don't see how that would possibly work if you need to install all 4. That's just not possible. Anyhow, that's just absolutely fascinating. I had never heard of a 30-pin to 30-pin or a 72-pin to 72-pin. So I think everyone's heard of the Toshiba Libretto tiny little notebook computer. Well, it seems like Hitachi made one as well, the VisionBook Traveler. This has a 133 MMX RAM, blah, 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 TFT active matrix screen. This thing is tiny and it looks freaking cool. So the Libretto has a little like trackpad, track point thing up on the screen to use your thumb on. This has one on the keyboard. It's hard to tell how small this is compared to the Libretto. But again, I've never even heard of this thing. What a neat little computer. One thing you may be noticing is the price of laptops is pretty high, and yes, that's right, it was only a more recent phenomenon, I mean recent in maybe the last 15 years, where laptop prices were pretty comparable to desktop, like you got similar performance on both. Back in the day, you paid a lot more for the privilege of having a laptop, and the performance was usually a lot worse than the desktop counterpart, even if it was the same exact speed processor. All right, now here's something I just love. Now, LGR has done a video of something like this. Maybe it was this exact product. This is the Backer 32 PC to VCR backup system. Backs up 3 gigabytes to standard videotape, Betamax, Video 8, VHS, whatever, 9 megabytes per minute. So yes, this has a composite video in and out, 69 bucks, and then you can back up your computer directly to a videotape. So that's like $2 per tape, I guess, at the time this catalog was out. Has error correction. I just love the concept of this. So there are 2 versions. There's the Backer and the Backer 32 external. One's a little bit cheaper, $69.99. The other one is $89.99. This must be, oh, that's the external there. Okay, I get it. This one's an internal card slot. That one is external. How do we find out what that means? Unfortunately, the copy here doesn't say anything about the external version, so we don't really know how that connects. Like, is it parallel port, or is there an ISA card that connects to that and it's just easier to plug your VCR into it? Are there benefits? I mean, it is like $20 more. but it doesn't say anything about what the difference is. So if anyone knows about that, I'd love to hear more, because that's fascinating to me. I remember when this came out and I saw this when it was first announced, and I was simply amazed at the whole idea of storing data on a videotape. Like, how awesome is that? And there it is. That's a whopping 3 gigs on a videotape. How cool. So of course, at the time of this was the era of the zip drive. And yes, I was a big proponent of zip drives at the time. I had, I think, a SCSI one at first, and then I had a USB one later, which would obviously have came out after this magazine or after this catalog. But look at the prices. I mean, well, the standard one was only $130. There was the Zip Plus, which was parallel and SCSI in one, and that was almost $200. But look at these cartridges. If you bought a 10-pack, the cartridges were $10 each. So that's a lot of money. I mean, I know it's 120 megabytes, a lot more than a floppy drive, but I don't remember ever having more than maybe 10 zip cartridges, I mean, because that's, you know, not an insubstantial amount of money. But on the other hand, it was perfect for carrying your data around. And I remember I had a zip drive at work and I had one at home, and I used to take a copy of all of my email, which was like in a spool file format, and I used to run Eudora, I think, and I had the same program at work and at home. And if I took that zip disk back and forth between work and home, then I always had all my email with me, because this was way before the days of like Gmail or having your mail accessible on a server. Typically, you would run your email program and it would download your email into your email program over POP3, and that would be deleted off the server. So the only way you could read old emails was if you had a copy of your entire mail archive. And that's exactly what I did on zip disks. And every day I brought that cartridge back and forth between work and home, and I never had a problem. Now, I did back that up periodically. I'd just keep a copy of it on my hard drive at home. And that way, in case the zip drive died, I wouldn't lose all my email, I'd just lose a little bit of it. But yeah, that's I never had click of death or any other problem with zip drives. And to this day on the channel, you see me using zip drives because I think they're great. But I remember when the Jazz drive came out, which was more like a little hard drive, and yes, 2 gigabytes, but that price, ooh, it was steep, and I never had one. And a single disc, $150. Now, yes, it was 2 gigabytes, but I mean, that's a lot of money, the drive plus the cartridge. So yeah, I never got that. And yes, remember that at the time, 6.4 gig hard drive, $250. So hard drives, you know, were really getting big and coming down in price, but yet compared to what we're paying these days, $250, I'm pretty sure I paid $200 on like a Black Friday sale for a 14 terabyte drive. And don't forget inflation, $249 then, like when this catalog was out, it's probably more like $400 or $500 now. So yeah, huge price difference and compared to capacity. All right, here's an interesting one. So they're advertising for $50, heatsink fan combo with a Peltier junction on it. So what a Peltier junction does, or I think a tech junction, I think they call it, if you apply power to it, one side of it gets hot and the other side gets cool. So it uses like the currents or the electricity or whatever to transfer heat. So the idea was, and this was really a flawed idea, that if you put this over your CPU, that it would transfer more of the heat into the heatsink and fan and allow what? The computer to run cooler? There was no such thing as like turbo boost or any of the stuff we have now where like the clocks are variable. You set your frequency to one frequency and that's where it's stuck all the time. I don't think these things really work to improve your cooling whatsoever, because the tech junction creates tons of heat on its own. So it actually makes the heatsink fan way hotter and work a lot harder than even just the heat from the processor. If anyone has any experience with using these back in the old days on Pentiums, I'd love to hear it. But I think I've seen modern testing, and these absolutely do not work to improve your thermals on your processor at all. It makes it worse, if anything. Right under the Peltier cooler is this: protect your PC from heat damage. Looks like it's a little display with temperature readout for $30. It doesn't seem to do anything except give you a reading. Oh, it has an audible alarm as well. So you would have to take action if your fan died or whatever, and then your computer got super hot inside. Now, I do remember that like in the old days, computers didn't have a way to monitor thermals. So with PCs, with fans, they did die. And I remember when I worked at a computer store, a computer would come in like with a fan that was clogged up with dust and dead. And the machine, after leaving it on for several hours, the whole computer would be burning hot at the touch at the outside of the metal case. You know, I don't know like what the actual temperature was inside, but I remember the computers got pretty hot. And I mean, that couldn't be good for them. And I think it would cause crashes and stuff. And that's why the person brought the computer in. All right, here we are to the printer section of the catalog. And yeah, color LaserJet, almost $4,000 in 1997 dollars. You can buy color laser printers now for next to nothing. And now I don't know if like the cost is realistic now, because of course you just throw your printer away when you need to replace the toner and buy a new one. But back then, things cost a lot more. Even inkjet printers were good quality and durable back then. HP was one of the best. So $369 for this DeskJet 870 CSE. And it looks like the cheapest color one you can get is this one right here at $199 for the DeskJet 672. Now they made a whole bunch of DeskJet models all kind of look like this. They were really pretty good, very durable printers. The ink cost a lot though, so just like today, that wasn't something you got out of. But if you were buying a color inkjet printer though for like $300-400, the alternative was a color laser printer for $4,000. So you were saving a ton of money on these. And the old laser printers, the color ones, they didn't print super great. Now the monochrome printers, like the LaserJet 5SI, I've worked on many of those over the years, and the 4000 series, these things are workhorses. Absolute, incredible quality workhorses. You get so many prints out of these things, trouble-free, without any issues. HP really was making good printers back then. I totally don't know anything about printers anymore. I have a cheap Epson like disposable inkjet printer that somehow still works after years. But honestly, like these things were amazing. I loved these printers. Now the printer I have, that Epson, actually is a printer scanner kind of combo unit. And even back in the 90s, they were making them, because check it out. Color printer and scanner for $400, a lot more than what we have these days, but it's made by Alps. So maybe that's actually a good price. Parallel printer cable. I assume the print head is inside there, so it scans and prints through the same paper path. But I'm noticing here too, they even have metallic inks available. That's kind of fascinating. Or I guess this is inkjet, right? Continuous tone, photographic. Yeah, I mean, this has got to be inkjet. $750, the Alps masterpiece. All right, here we are to the monitor section. Now, it makes me sad to look at this because none of this stuff is made anymore. Of course, CRTs haven't been made in a number of years, especially high resolution ones like this. And they were so common and plentiful in the 90s, and at the 97, they really started getting good quality with like the digital controls, so you could auto sync different modes and stuff like that. But yeah, looking at this and seeing all these beautiful brand new VGA monitors does make me kind of sad that you can't easily get this stuff these days. It feels like most VGA monitors that I get are just worn out to hell. And really, if you think about why, here's my theory on that. VGA monitors, unlike all the ones before, like composite monitors, stuff like that, VGA monitors had an extremely long usable life. I mean, you could probably still buy video cards today with a VGA connector on them. And that VGA monitor from back then would plug in and just work perfectly. Well, as I've talked about, CRTs are consumable, and as you use them, they will get dim and blurry and stuff like that. The tube just wears out. And probably a lot of people just kept using a VGA monitor until it was worn out, and then they bought a flat screen. It's just kind of what happened. Earlier monitors, things that were like composite and stuff, well, once you went from like an old 64 to a PC, you couldn't use the composite monitor anymore. You know, generally people would buy like a CGA, EGA, or even a VGA monitor. That might have been their upgrade path. That's what mine was. I went from my Amiga to a PC with VGA. So there was just no need for those old monitors. So they kind of stopped, frozen in time when those computers were stopped being used. But VGA monitors, you could easily have bought it in, what, 97, and technically still been using it in 2017. Probably not likely, but you know, you could get a good 10 years out of it or longer before you finally gave up. So that's kind of my theory on why so many VGA monitors are so worn out now. Now looking here, like, oh, 15-inch monitors, just $229, and it would get to you shipped, and it wouldn't be broken either, and it'd be brand new with a bright, vibrant image. Now on this page here, there's an entire chart telling you like all the resolutions that are supported. Some of them do 1280 by 1024, the dot pitch, the viewable size. Like this is all 13-inch, which is, you know, sold as a 14-inch or sometimes sketchily as a 15-inch, even though the viewable area was like 13.7-inch. Very sketchy. All the way up to these 20 inches down here, or 21 inches, which were actually more like 20 or 19. 1800 by 1440 resolution, 1600 by 1200, really high res stuff. You paid a ton for this stuff. Like this ViewSonic here, $1,199. Ouch. And I don't even know what shipping would cost. It might be a fortune. Here are some KDS monitors, and I totally do remember this brand. And look at this one. It comes with speakers. That is so freaking ugly. Ugh. So the monitor itself, like this KDS looks fine, but this is the speaker here, and it's just, oh, that is so ugly. Anyways, the monitor was $399, included the $50 ugly speakers. Woo. Here's another pretty ugly LG monitor. It's a Gold Star monitor with some really ugly speakers. I mean, these other ones are totally fine, you know, very normal looking. Plug and play, digital controls, 0.28 dot pitch, you know, the usual stuff. And a really reasonable price. And this is probably a decent little 15-inch monitor, or more like 13-inch. ViewSonic monitors. These were good quality and, you know, not as good as Sony, but still pretty great. And you did pay a little bit of a price premium with them. Compared to these down here, the Utopia, never heard of that brand. $139 though for this 13.3-inch viewable, so 14-inch monitor with a 0.28 dot pitch and 1024 by 768 resolution. It's not even that ugly looking. Well, this one especially. This is a little bit more ugly with the ugly logo right there. So here's a little section for NEC monitors, and they were really quite the gold standard. I mean, Sony was probably the top of the line, but NEC generally regarded as the next best thing. And these things, I owned one of these. I forgot which model it was. This is an E series here. I had eventually, I bought it later, like in the early 2000s. It was maybe a 19 or a 21 inch, and it was a great monitor, very clear, very bright. Didn't keep it long though, because it didn't take long for me to get flat panel. But at the time of this catalog, the NEC Multisync LCD 400V right here, look at the prices. The 400V, $1,429 for a 14-inch LCD. And if you wanted to go to a 20-inch LCD at 1280 by 1024, a 20-inch, I mean, that's nothing now. $6,000. Like, the quality of these are probably pretty good, and even today, you know, you could use one of these without too much issue. They would have fluorescent backlights, which might be dim, but, you know, otherwise they would work. $6,000 for the 20-inch one. I mean, talk about splurging. You could buy a 21-inch monitor, and while the NEC one was very expensive at $1,100, well, maybe they all were, but you just didn't get that pixel-perfect active matrix LCD look. And I think when people started seeing these flat panels, they were just like, that's the way to go. We got to get those. But oof, those prices, that's early adopter tax right there. All right, and look, we're getting into the video cards here. So the Viper, the Fire GL, I mean, the prices weren't super expensive. Some of these had built-in MPEG decoding, 200 megahertz or 200 hertz refresh rates. So NVIDIA Riva 128 for $189. 3DFX, which card? The Monster 3D. Which 3DFX processor was that? 4 megs of RAM. Can you imagine? That would have been a Voodoo 1, I guess. $189, and then the 3D Labs per media, $229. That could do 2D and 3D, but the original 3DFX, yeah, Monster 3D, only did 3D, but just a mere $189. I mean, yeah, that's not cheap, but to get 3D capability with your computer back then, it's pretty great. Here we go. We're getting into the rewritable drives. So 2X rewritable, $400. And don't forget inflation there. Things were expensive early on. Now, of course, this is after a number of years that these were out. The price dropped dramatically. But even these seem pretty expensive. I don't really remember when I first got my CD writer. I think it was later than this, though. I don't remember paying that much money. Because look, a CD-ROM drive is just $49. What is this? or that's a 6X. Okay, a 32X would be $99. So, you know, we'd all get by with a cheap $49 drive because you had to read CDs, games and stuff came on it. But CD writers, very much a luxury. Oh, look at this, a CD changer, $89. It looks like it's the Nakamichi one. So that would be 4 CDs, or yeah, 4 CDs? Yeah, 8X, 4 CDs in here. And I'm pretty sure, it doesn't really talk about it. Boy, this magazine, or this catalog's not great. They don't give you a lot of details, but I assume that's an IDE drive. I think I actually have one of these, or something very similar to this. And I have also a Pioneer one that's a SCSI-based one. That's a 6-disc changer. I'll have to make a video about those one day, but these are something that kind of came and went with not much fanfare. And it's kind of interesting because it is an 8X drive, right? And it's $89. And well, a 6X drive was $49. But if you were playing games with multiple discs, I think you could get quite a lot out of these. And I think it was relatively plug and play with Windows. So yeah, I'm surprised these didn't gain more traction. But I never saw these until much more recently. Here's something that's mildly interesting. It's a touchpad and it is $50. So if you think Apple was the first person selling external touchpads for computers, think again. PS2 and Serial, Memorex branding. I'm sure they just stuck their name on there. Touchpad, program disc, stylus, pen. I'm pretty sure this would be a capacitive touchpad, so you just use your finger on it, or you could use the stylus. You didn't need to use the stylus. Yeah, it says right here you can use your finger or stylus on the touch surface. All right, put this in the category of strange things IBM put their brand on. A subwoofer for the external speaker system. It's the IBM Aptiva subwoofer, $35. This is probably on like blowout sale. I doubt many people bought many of these, and I doubt there are very many floating around. Maybe PC Reset had some. Oh boy, everyone, check this out. There's that horrible keyboard. That kid's keyboard, which is like the worst keyboard ever made, the My First keyboard. And it was $70, and there was another version for $80 for this junk. Look online on YouTube for reviews of this thing. It is abysmal, total, complete garbage. It has a couple things I didn't even know about. It has a 90-second delay, protects the PC during boot up, so I guess you can't push any keys. And it does say it's colorful and peanut butter proof. All right, take a look at this. This is the iPen. Now remember, the iMac came out in 1998, I think August or like middle of the year sometime. So this would have predated that, and it's the iPen for writing on your PC. It says it has a special elastometer or elastomeric surface that creates a unique pen on paper feel. So obviously as you wrote on that tablet, it obviously was like pressure sensitive or whatever, and it would digitize what you were writing, probably into documents. Like, I doubt there was OCR and stuff, not at the time this was out, but maybe. But $130 for the iPen. Okay, and this is pretty hilarious as well. This was like a voice over IP thing in the late 90s, so what, like 97, it used the parallel port. Very interesting. I don't know if I've heard of this. Parallel port adapter, works with mic, web browsing, parallel pass-through port, $200. But huge savings of money. And in the US at the time, even calling across the country was quite expensive. And it looks like, well, yeah, you only paid 15 cents a minute or 10 cents a minute off peak to call across the country, which I think was a lot cheaper than if you use long distance with your regular phone carrier. And here's a piece of Adobe software I honestly have never heard of, PageMill. Easiest way to create beautiful web pages for the World Wide Web, and it's fast for $50. Well, from $50. The full package is $100. Upgrade was $50. And yeah, if you want to make some super fugly web pages, there's your chance. It is so ugly. Exciting backgrounds with, oh, it's so bad. It'd be hilarious if someone made a review of this with like, and made some current web pages, or like did a review to show what you could do with this in 2022. Here's something that people may not be familiar with. RJ45 base Ethernet originally, when you had a little device on your desk with a few ports in it, it was actually a hub. So unlike a switched network device, a hub would literally replicate, or the traffic would go in one port and would just come out of all the other ports all simultaneously. There was absolutely no smarts in these whatsoever. And because every machine on your network, anytime it sent one packet, it got sent to every single other machine, it created things like broadcast storms, or you had congestion and you had collisions, because two computers could try to talk at the same time and it would literally collide. Those packets would collide with each other. This is all stuff we just do not have to deal with anymore due to the fact we have incredibly cheap little mini switches that sit on your desk that do, switch Ethernet. Each port is handled by a switch processor that basically makes sure you don't have conflicts and collisions, and it's a lot faster, and it only sends the traffic based on ARP routing tables to the correct ports. So yeah, that was a pretty novel and new thing back then, and it was not cheap. So this one here is a switching hub, which is basically a hub and a switch combined. So I wouldn't be surprised if it has like two switched ports or one switched port, and maybe that's one switched port. And it just means that all the devices hooked up to the bulk of the hub ports are at least isolated to this device, and it won't send their traffic unnecessarily to other devices on your network. But that was like that kind of middle ground, and notice it's $270. And here we are with some switches. So a 2-port switch, $240. If you want to get an 8-port, it's $800. So something that would you just pay, $30-40 for. Well, these are 100 megabit too, so you buy gigabit switches now for $50 or whatever for 8 ports. It then costs $700, $800, $900 for just 8 ports of that. Here's an interesting thing here. Connect all your PCs to the internet sharing one modem and one phone line for $250? Wow. So I'm assuming that you would probably set this up with some software in your PPP account. So your dial-up account would be configured in this box, and it would control the modem to dial up to the internet, and then it would share that one modem connection. We're talking like, what? I don't know at the time, 56 kilobits. So with a whole bunch of computers, like that was painfully slow with one computer. If 2 people tried to do it at the same time, oh boy. Can't read the brand name there, but the internet sharing box. One access for everyone? Yes, now it's possible. Before, it was like a whole bunch of PCs with modems and wires running all over. Now, it's all your PCs. There'll be an Ethernet hub, and then this box, the ISB 100, and one modem. Or, of course, you could have ISDN or whatever, and you paid that money. Wow. It does say here, not compatible with AOL. Yeah, because that used a custom dialer. It wasn't just standard PPP. I've gotten into the software section now, and this one caught my eye. It says, make all your PC hard drives act like they're one big disk. $40. It's made by Synchronous or Synchronous. It uses Windows 95 shell integration, so it's sort of all easy to access and control. Virtual file management system is transparent to Windows 95. So you can add or remove disks. Wow, that's interesting. I'd never heard of that. Pretty cool if you had one hard drive and then you added a second drive to your computer. Instead of having like a C and a D drive, you use this software, and then that way it was sort of transparent. You just had more free space. Of course, with Windows NT and on, it had like the JBOD, just a bunch of disks capability where you could do stuff like this and then resize the partitions and whatnot built in. But with Windows 95, since it's DOS-based, not so easy. And there it is. It's Microsoft's bestsellers, Windows 95 for $90, and Windows NT Workstation, which looked like Windows 95, for $140. 2 very, very good operating systems. Windows 95, I mean, game changer for the PC world. Absolute game changer. And then Windows NT was the next game changer, taking that Windows 95 UI, which honestly a lot of it still exists today with the very current Windows 11, and putting it on top of Windows NT, which was a robust non-DOS-based operating system, which of course underpins Windows 11 or any version of Windows you might be using today, goes back to these versions of NT and of course earlier. So yeah, really good stuff. It wasn't until Windows 2000, which was like the next version of Windows NT. It wasn't really until Windows 2000 though that you could legitimately use the Windows NT operating system for everything on a desk, like for a home user, that is. Mostly this was used in office environments, and home users really always had 95. There wasn't like always drivers available for NT for lots of sound cards and video cards and stuff like that. I mean, like weird stuff like capture cards and things like that. But by 2000, Windows 2000, they changed the way the drivers worked and stuff. And then pretty much everything started working, and that's when you could legitimately make that shift. That's when I made the shift. I only played with NT, I never used a lot of it, but with Windows 2000, I was actually a beta tester, and Microsoft sent me a full release copy, which I still have that boxed copy, which I used, and I absolutely loved it, and I did not miss DOS with its non-protected memory and its crashiness with Windows 95 and whatever. But when Windows 95 came out, I was coming from an Amiga, and I was kind of blown away that the PC could finally multitask. You could do more than one thing at a time legitimately. I mean, Windows had cooperative multitasking with Windows 3.1, but the whole OS was just, you know, not that advanced. Windows 95, yeah, groundbreaking. Keyboards and speakers, check these things out. Yamaha made little PC speakers. And while they had relatively cheapy ones that didn't sound good, I think these here, the YST M100s, $140, these sounded really quite good, if I recall. Just like excellent quality, kind of comparative or comparable to the Roland speakers. All right, well now we're getting to the digital camera section. Check this out, external card reader, but this actually looks like it's not just compact flash, but like PCM CIA cards, $140. So yeah, you would need, okay, it actually has a compact flash adapter or slot and a regular PCM CIA slot. That is so expensive. Most likely this came with a card that went inside your computer. It doesn't really say here, but I don't think, yeah, it doesn't say. I'm pretty sure that this wasn't just parallel port. Now you could get parallel port card readers, but they were slow. So yeah, having one with an internal card was really the way to go, but you paid dearly for them. And now, yeah, there's just loads of digital cameras, and they were very expensive for very, very mediocre quality. At least by this time, the cameras started to have LCD screens on them, so they weren't the type that were screenless like the earliest ones were. This is a weird one. Looks like you can remove the image sensor from the body and has a cable. What? Like, why? The Minolta Dimage 5. But check this out, it looks like a DSLR. It's 3 CCDs. So it's got 3 CCDs in there for 1.75 megapixels, resolution of 1528 by 1148, and includes 131 megabyte PCMCIA card for 114 images. It's a Minolta, right? So you could use Minolta proper lenses. $4,799. Wow. Award-winning by Mac user. I mean, think about what our phones could do. Think about like this junky, like, I don't know, this is some LG junk phone here. I got this like for 20 bucks to use with, you know, the serial port that's on here, I guess. Anyways, yeah, it's the camera on that junk phone. I don't know if it's as good as this, but certainly better than these cameras. And this thing is an entire Android phone, huh? The camera technology, it just goes without saying, is so amazingly advanced now compared to how it was back then. And look, here's the thing about video editing on the PC, and like, you know, this was just the very beginning where this started to become possible. Like, I mean, and I'm putting that in quotes because it was very rudimentary, at least at this cheap price level. Like, you had professional level stuff that was good, but the fact that I make videos in HD on a personal computer now, I could use a cheap laptop to do it, is pretty amazing. This is one thing that has gone from the realm of professionals to like everyone on the planet could do video editing now for free, basically. You get DaVinci Resolve, you can get the free version, which is completely fully functional, and you can make top level videos now for free. And before, you had to deal with this junk software and super low quality images and all that stuff. Let's see, does this talk about what resolution this is? And actually, you know what I think this even might be? This doesn't even digitize the video. I think this just controls your VCR and your camcorder. So it allows you to kind of like snap pictures, and then you can edit it together, and it will pause the VCR and like assemble edit. Before we had like, I think what's called offline video editing, I always mix up that terminology. You would do your editing in a way that it controlled the decks. So you would kind of assemble it all in software, and you had these edit lists, and then you would hit finalize or make or whatever the right term was, and it would then control the playback decks, and it had a record deck, and it would control them. It would dub a little bit from the playback to record, then pause the record deck, and then it would fast forward and find the right new section on your playback deck, and then unpause and, you know, while I was playing, and it would assemble the final product by editing that stuff all together. That's just the way it was done back then. In fact, I remember working on really early video editing systems, and what they could do is you could digitize your video, so you could do the editing with video on the computer, but it was relatively low quality. But what would happen is when you were done, it would create that edit list, and then it would control the VCRs to make the final edit from tape to tape. So you weren't using that digitized footage in your output. That was just an aid for the editing. So yeah, things have changed a lot, and I think that's what this thing does here. Video Director 200, Pinnacle made this thing. Now, if you wanted to get images from videos into your computer, use something like this, $79 or $80. The AI Gotcha 2 could capture up to, well, these really weirdly high resolution images, but of course did an instant frame grab, 1/30th of a second from a playback of a video. So you'd be playing your TV or your VCR tape or whatever, and you hit capture and this will bring it in. It looks like it uses the parallel port. There were plenty of these on the Amiga, like way before this existed, because the Amiga, of course, had graphics capability that were kind of surpassing the PC early on. But I don't think, well, it came later where the Amiga could just capture a full video frame like this. Of course, the video toaster could do that, but I think like external devices that could do that, that kind of came later. But it's kind of cool this stuff started to come down in price. $79 is after a $30 mail-in rebate. You know, mail-in rebates were a big thing, and I hated those things, but I filled them out because, you know, $30 is $30. Oh, that's kind of strange in the back here. There's like the Sony Vaio stuff, and look at that purple beauty, the Sony Vaio desktop. So beautiful Trinitron monitor in purple, desktop PC, internet ready, everyone, internet ready. $999, a Pentium 166, massive 2.5 gig hard drive, really massive. That's kind of ridiculous. There's so much bigger ones in this catalog. 32 megs of RAM, 2 megs of video RAM, MPEG-1 digital video playback. So I assumed maybe there was a hardware decoder. It says it was Sony tuned, whatever that means. 3D accelerated. And actually this $999 price is without the fancy monitor here with the cool speakers. And I don't know, is that a subwoofer on the bottom? It looks like you had to pay an extra $350 to get that monitor. Monitor sold separately. But honestly, that's a nice looking monitor. I mean, it's purple, and I gotta say, I love the purple because it's so different than all the beige and then the beginning of black and gray we were getting, but the purple that Sony did, just awesome. And look, they sell the monitor on its own right here. It's $350 if you bundle it, but on its own, $399, 0.25, because of course it's that beautiful Trinitron, 13.9 viewable, so yeah, it's like a 15-inch. Built-in left and right and subwoofer. Yes, that is a subwoofer in the bottom there. Awesome, and a built-in microphone. What a cool thing. The 17-inch version, $719. Ouch! And it looks like the Mavica just came out. That's the Sony digital camera. $429. It saved on floppy disks. It was pretty cool, but honestly, not really, because very soon after Canon cameras came out, compact flash, those things were pretty great. And yeah, I had a Sony camera that uses memory stick. It would have been, of course, later than this. But I'm glad I never got into the whole Mavica thing, because that just, it was neat, but kind of a dead end as well. Speaking of video capture, the Dazzle devices. I remember these things. Power users, the Snazzy. So this was the Dazzle. It was parallel port based. Video capture, well, it says it has MPEG-1 real-time hardware encoder. So it could digitize hardware. Wow, MPEG-1 and send it over the parallel port? S-Video composite in? Wow, that's not a bad price, really. But if you wanted to do better quality, well, higher resolution, I guess, MPEG-1 maybe at 320 by 240, and this was probably at a lower resolution, then you had to get the Snazzy card for $400. And it looks like you get it with a DVD or CD writer for $600. Ooh. And here's one, the quick video. It says capture 30 frames per second, no internal card, uses your parallel port. How much you want to bet it's 30 frames per second at a postage size video. Like, I doubt it's even 120 resolution. I bet you it was like 96 by 60 pixels or something like that to do 30 frames per second. It says you can capture up to 30 frames per second and up to 320 by 240. But you notice how they're not combining those two resolutions or those two metrics? Well, that's because I bet you 320 by 240 was like 2 frames per second or something like that. But all of this was all these ads talk about this. Send video mail, like amazing through the email. I mean, people had modems in this time. Everyone was on a modem. So you weren't sending any kind of like high-res video clips. You were sending like tiny little terrible clips. Video is completely a misnomer. I mean, it was so bad quality. And we are almost to the end of this catalog. There's a couple things here. Look at these Kodak digital cameras. They're so ugly. The design of these is just, ugh. Now these down here, the DC50 and the DC120, these were the early ones. $500 and $800 for this DC120. World's first 1.2 megapixel. And I don't remember the DC50. I think this was the one that Apple sold as the Apple Quick Take, or was it this one? Either way, the pictures that these took were horrible and no screen on them. They had a little like LCD screen that just showed you like how many pictures you were taking. No color display like these ones have. So I'm surprised like this 120 was still selling for that much when this one with a screen and zoom, I think this actually has zoom in it as well. 1 megapixel. Be surprised if this didn't take better pictures than this, just because it was newer and the technology, as I mentioned, it was advancing very quickly back then. And we're on the penultimate page here. The Beepware. Is that a watch that thinks it's a pager? I think it is. So it's made by Timex, and it looks like the radio RF part is from Motorola, and it's a pager in a watch. Never heard of this. Use an 800 number. You could send phone number, you know, pager messages to this. 900 megahertz Motorola technology. Fancy. And it had the old Indiglo. That was Timex's like backlighting technology for these watches at the time. Stopwatch, all the usual stuff. It works anywhere in the US. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it had some software as well. Well, it says Windows software. 129 bucks. I don't know how much pagers cost at the time, but that's kind of cool to have something that was just a watch that was a pager. And there we go. I'm covering the address on the back here. That is the end of the TigerDirect PC price Blitz catalog. It does say the volume here. Volume, what, 5, 6, 7, 8. Volume 8, issue 3, $2.50. I called this a magazine. I called it a catalog interchangeably. But if they were trying to charge $2.50 for this, really did anyone pay money for this? I don't think so. This would have been free. I'm assuming this would have been free. But they tried to say they were charging $2.50. But anyhow, that is it. I hope you liked my walkthrough of this hilarious memory lane catalog here with some crazy products you just don't see anymore. Don't forget, I scanned it with the ET16 Plus from CZUR here. So there is a link in the description to the scanner if you're interested in picking one up yourself. Not affiliated, a link or anything like that. And then don't forget, the PDF that I scanned is gonna be on archive.org, and the link is in the description below, so you can go down memory lane yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, thumbs down, you know, all the usual stuff. Subscribe if you haven't already, it would really help me out. Huge thanks to my patrons. Their names are scrolling off the side of the screen. And I guess that is gonna be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.